If you're familiar with the center, we talk about training constantly. It couldn't be overstated. Now, in this video, we're going to talk about how important it is to do it correctly. When you're talking specifically about things like stress inoculation training, you need to ensure a certain outcome, a quality learning outcome. And there's a way that you do it. There's ways that you can do it well. There's ways that you can do it bad. We're going to demystify those things for you in this video. Team, let's talk about training. How do we find success in creating quality learning outcomes? What are some of the things that we see in the industry that, don't go well, but particularly when we do talk about the sticky sauce of, putting some stress in the training? Yeah, it's
the sticky sauce.
The sticky sauce.
Well, we'll go ahead and lead this one.
Please.
You got some sticky sauce for us?
I've got some sticky sauce, or maybe sauce to avoid. In organizations, don't assume everybody can train. Like, man, we come across some smart people, and they do our instructor certification course. We're going to go through and give them the material. Don't assume that they can train it, right? And it matters so much because you need to be able to hold an audience, captivate an audience, and sometimes the stuff that we're teaching always isn't the most entertaining, to be quite blunt, but you can teach it in an entertaining way. You can teach it to where it is the sticky sauce. And it really comes down to delivery. A little bit about your passion for what it is that you do, but just being able to relate who it is that you're teaching it to. Stacy's great at this. She's able to connect with an audience really well. So being able to take a subject and have the audience captivated from the moment the introductions are made is huge. Mm-hmm. So yeah, throughout your organization, don't pick people just because they happen to be in a position. Pick people that can deliver.
I love that.
Yeah, well, the key is relevancy, right? So people don't want to sit there and listen to the same spiel you would give to healthcare as the same spiel you'd give to Walmart, as the same spiel you'd give to some, tech agency. They want to know, like, okay, I get it. I get, like, this stuff matters. We already have everybody's attention in this space, but it's, how does this relate to me on my day-to-day? So the sooner you can make that connection, the greater the impact the training is going to have, the greater your outcome is going to be, because people are like, oh, wait, this matters to me. Oh, I care now. Okay, now you really have my attention. And then what do I do? And then what do I do? When we talk about stress inoculation training, it's all about exposure. And when you're talking response, that's incredibly important. And I don't mean like, it's great if you can go through a scenario and you have someone come in that they're armed with a gun, a knife or something, and you're running through the whole aspect of it, right? But there's several different things to be aware of when you're running through response training, and we'll get into that, but that exposure, right? So like the first time you go into this training, your blinders are like here, like, okay, I'm uncomfortable with this topic. Okay, maybe it's just like a tabletop. I'm sitting in a classroom and we're running through like, what would I do right now if? And it's like, okay, I'm seeing things like this. The next time you have this training, you're like, okay, I'm used to seeing a gun on the screen. I'm used to seeing a knife on the screen. Like, okay, I'm kind of over that. I'm a little bit calmer. And now my blinders are like here. So now I'm like, okay, I'm seeing it through that wider lens. Each and every time you do it, you're creating this wider lens for your audience, for your learner. And so this is why what I'm seeing now, very common, is all of this apprehension in adults going into this type of training. When I talk about it with a much younger audience, adolescents 18 and under, they're like, yeah, we get it. Tell us what we need to know. They're already inoculated to this type of stress, which is unfortunate. That's now the climate that they're growing up in, but it's very fortunate in response. And so, and so that really matters. And so the more you can expose somebody to this type of training in the space that we live in, and it could be run, hide, fight training. It could be high risk travel training, situational awareness training, whatever it is. The more exposure the person has, the more they're going to see it clearly. And this is back to your world is, special forces is the reason why they spend so much of their time training is because it's easy to say, hey, when you're downrange and you're staring in the face of the enemy's barrel, like do this until you're downrange staring in the face of the enemy's barrel and you have all this adrenaline and you're all over the place and you're, short circuiting in the flight, fight, or freeze. You don't want people are going to freeze for a second, but then you need that response to happen. And that's when training kicks in. That's that muscle memory. So the more of this muscle memory you can create in somebody, the more quickly they're going to react, if that's a word, the quicker they're going to react and respond to whatever event they're faced with. And that's why it's so important too. And I'll get off my soapbox in a minute. But when we're talking about, crisis response, and we're talking run, hide, fight, a couple different components there. That's why we say active assailant now, not active shooter, because everybody's like, okay, person walks in with a gun. What do I do? And it's like, okay, so you run people through this and it's like, okay, but now if I stand up and this is a knife, does that change your response? The answer should be yes, it should. If I walk in and I have a backpack or a bag and it's smoking and you smell chemicals, like, does that change your response strategy? It should. If you're already outside, what do you now do? And I think some of the dangers in the run, hide, fight training is you can get so concentrated on the hide aspect. The ultimate goal, though, is to run and get away. And so, but we focus on, okay, you're going to hide. And what are you going to barricade with? And what do you hide behind? And what can you use a weapon? And just all these different components. It's like, but your ultimate goal is to run and get away. So don't ever lose focus on that. And don't ever lose focus on what is your end state. You might have to hide until you can run and get away. But like, ultimately, your goal is to run and hide and get, or run and get away.
That's a good point. I think people mistake stress there too within their training program is often like yelling and screaming. I mean, we get clients now that like, hey, we want you to come do some training and, we need it to be stressful. It's going to be with some run, hide, fight training, or it's going to be a tabletop exercise for a crisis response. And like, no, we want you to yell and scream and bang wood together and try to stress everybody out for that stress inoculation. And that's not necessarily what it is. You don't need to do that. I come from a background of things like this, right? And in my world, there is some of that too, but what you're relying on is you increase the stress by increasing the complexity of the situation, the dynamics, whether that's a crisis, a crisis team doing a tabletop exercise. Like, you don't need to yell and scream at them to add that element of stress. In the military, we talk crawl, walk, run for what it is that we do. Well, in the military, we crawl, walk, run, and we also sprint. And sprint was when you add that complexity of the situation. Like, okay, there's so many different complexities that you can add to run, hide, fight. That's going to make a person have to decide on the spot. I don't need to run around with blocks of wood, smacking them in people's faces saying, what are you going to do now? What are you going to do now? It just doesn't make sense to do it that way. The most elite, at least the most elite people, training in the world, they don't always do it that way. That's a whole different thing.
And this isn't fear-based training, and I think that's where a lot of people miss the mark. You don't lead with fear. 1 out of every 3 of you are going to be a victim of domestic violence. You don't lead with that statistic. You want people walking out of the training a little taller, a little bit more confident, empowered. Like, okay, like I'm not just this sitting duck. If one of these situations, or if a situation happens, and I at least know that there's a lot I can do to try to help myself in this situation until help arrives, until first responders arrive, and the same thing goes for like, okay, let's say you do active assailant training every week for a year, and now somebody walks in with a gun and you go to run and they're like, freeze or I'll shoot. I don't know. You tell me run, hide, fight. This totally changes everything. You want to give people that mental capacity to be able to make those decisions for themselves, the best decisions they can, and create that muscle memory. So it's like options. What are my options? Okay, now I'm in a hostage situation. That changes things for me. Now, now I'm going to comply and all of these things, but you're still going to assess the situation.
Yeah, I love that. So it's not necessarily that you have to be intense to inoculate stress or to introduce stress. It can be the complexity of the situation or the scenario being navigated. It can be progressive exposure, and that if you have a fear of something, well, you don't bring the fear in 100% to face it. It's those little iterative steps in that direction so you can build that confidence. What are things that y'all do when you are teaching or when you are trying to ensure a high learning outcome to include with some of these different, stressful issues that we train to? What are things that you do to help ensure that learning outcome, to help people have confidence coming out of these educational engagements that we'll do or training?
Well, what Stacy does, actually, but in all seriousness, what Stacy does, and maybe she was probably going to say this anyway, but I'm going to say it maybe a little bit different, is she's stories, one, and stories that are relatable to the situation that they're in, and makes it her relatable, but then the situation relatable too. She does a great job of that. I try to do it, but I'm not as good as she is. But I mean, you could sit there through a 4-hour training and then talk to the folks after the training, and what they remember are the stories that you told more than anything. So anytime you could tell a story that's relatable, they will retain that knowledge. They will be able to implement that and see how it is, how it works in their day-to-day life, their day-to-day job, and they'll pull so much more from it than instead of just standing up in front of them and lecturing all the time. But yeah, I definitely try to work that in to any time that I'm teaching. I think it kind of falls back to the point that I was making initially, is find a person that's an actual good instructor, not just someone who happens to be in a position.
Yeah.
Relate to them, tell the stories. But
Well, you hit on it earlier, and it's that empowerment piece, right? Because it's one of those things where people walk into one of these situations and they think, I have to be special forces in order to respond correctly and live through it, and so on and so forth, or military or law enforcement or whatever. It's like, actually, you don't. And here's why. And so case studies are great for that. But then also that empowerment piece, and this is something that's specific to us here at CPPS, is that mental permission slip. This is so important when you're dealing with most of your learners, is every time you've been in a situation and you've listened to that little voice, you've listened to that intuition, and nothing happened, nothing happens. So then what happens is people start to tell you, when you're like, I don't know about this. I don't know if we should do this. I don't know if we should travel here. I don't know whatever it might be. And they're like, you're overreacting. Nothing's going to happen. It didn't happen last time. It didn't happen. And it's like, well, yeah, because I listened to my instinct. And so allowing people to turn that back on, and this is where kids are really good. They haven't learned to silence that yet. They don't care about being rude and saying, sorry, I'm going to take the next Uber. There's just, this feeling. They don't care about that. They're just like, no, I'm sorry. I'm going to get the next one. Like, have a nice day. Where we're like, I feel bad. I don't want to do that. Even though all the warning signs are there. But how do you prove that when you got out of that Uber and got in the next one, that was correct? Nothing happened. And so, a lot of times it's walking into a situation and having that awareness about you to say something just doesn't feel right, and be empowered enough to listen to that. That is your reaction. That is how you avoided being in one of these situations. Being in a crowded mall and being like, something here just doesn't feel right. And then you tune in and you're like, oh yeah, that person over there looks really nervous. They're sweating profusely. I just don't want to be, I don't have a good feeling about this. Like, do that. Like, that's okay. Give yourself that permission slip to not be in that situation in the first place. So even taking it, all the way back further, but this training is really about empowerment. I mean, even when you go into awareness and it's just preventative, it's like just the empowerment of reporting, the empowerment of the intervention piece, the just really empowering each one of us and not just as a coworker, but as a society, to start listening to these things, to start responding before they ever take place, to report before this person, actually carries out what it is that they're planning. So, and that doesn't make headlines.
Yeah. So a quick final thought here. Organizations constantly battle with the time and investment it takes to train people, and there's the dynamic between, is awareness training enough, or ultimately, if we're trying to achieve some sort of behavioral change or achieve some sort of skill set that is applied to an issue, how can organizations work through that dynamic? Is awareness training sufficient, or do they need to be figuring out ways to go further?
Okay, I have a couple thoughts here. So one thing that's really good is a lot of times, especially in corporate trainings, people walk into it like, ugh, another corporate training. Like, great, I'm just here to check a compliance box, right? Do a climate assessment survey beforehand. Let people tell you what it is that they want to hear in a situation surrounded by workplace violence prevention. There's a lot of topics here. What concerns you the most about your personal safety and security about this workplace? And maybe it's not even about the workplace. Maybe it's about my commute to the workplace. Maybe it's once I park my car and I have to, walk in, and when I'm walking in, it's 5 a.m. and it's dark. You never know until you start asking the question. So do one of these surveys, allow people to respond, and then build the training around that. Now people feel heard and understood, like, oh, you're actually listening to us. You actually get it. And then they're more in tune with the training. They're more involved in the training because they're like, this was built for me.
Funny enough,
you guys
that's
are getting it.
one way California actually got that in the law.
Oh, really?
They see the value for that, where they're for 553.
Oh,
they're
yeah.
like, get the participation of your people. And it's not thought of in that sense, but that's exactly the heart of it.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, and I'll let you guys speak, is
Oh, really?
the other component here is it doesn't have to be a 5-hour-long training. It doesn't have to be a 1-hour-long training. It could be a quick lunch and learn. It can be a pre-shift, hey, here's some considerations to work through today. And oh, by the way, here's a nice reminder of this component of awareness training, right? Here's some behaviors to look for. Here's who to report it to. Like, it doesn't have to be this formalized, you have to pay everybody overtime and do all this. It can be built into your day-to-day. It can be built into your culture. A nice reminder in the break room, a nice email that goes out. Hey, just remember this. And now you're building this culture of safety awareness where it's just now part of the day-to-day. And so it's not like another email or another training, right?
Yeah.
It's just built in. Now you guys.
Any last thoughts, brother?
Yeah, that's pretty much what I was going to say.
It's great.
Thanks for wrapping that up.
Sorry.
Well, everybody, you can't say it or hear it better than from Stacy Brown herself. If you would like training, email us at info@cpps.com, and we will make sure you can have Stacy Brown personally come to your place of business and take care of all your training needs. All kidding aside, my friends, thanks for watching. Hopefully you found a couple nuggets out of this. I mean, ultimately, done correctly, training really can change skill sets. It really can create an environment where the things you need to happen can happen. And that's what training is all about, is building skill set, building competency, and done correctly, it can be with powerful effect on your organization and the personal safety of your folks. If you have any questions, reach out to us. CPPS.com. We'd love to answer any questions you may have. Like, comment, subscribe, wherever that may happen on the screen around you. If you want to, we would love you to. Get to the centerfold. That's on our website as well. That's our newsletter. That's where we give our content first and foremost before we release it to anybody else. But for now, that's it. Until the next one. Adios.